A gambler jumped off a Royal Caribbean cruise ship with $14,600 strapped to his chest after losing $16,000 in the casino. Rescued by jet skiers, he now faces a federal crime charge. The Caribbean sun poured down on the rhapsody of the seas, turning the water into a sheet of sparkling glass. The cruise ship cut through the waves like a palace on the ocean. Passengers leaned over railings with cameras, drinks in hand, capturing the horizon. Steel drums played near the pool deck. Bartenders poured rum cocktails, and the smell of grilled shrimp floated in the air. It was supposed to be a trip filled with laughter, leisure, and luxury. Among the hundreds of smiling tourists, one man carried a different kind of excitement in his chest. His name was J. Xander Omar Gonzalez Diaz. He wore casual clothes, but his eyes betrayed a restless hunger. He was not here just for the pools or the beaches. His paradise was waiting below deck. At night, when the decks grew quieter, the casino came alive. Neon lights reflected off polished tables, dice rolled across green felt, and every win was followed by the triumphant sound of clinking coins. The casino had a pulse, a rhythm that called to those who believed fortune was only one hand away. Jay was among the first to walk through its doors. He carried thick wads of cash, his hands shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from anticipation. Dealers greeted him with practiced smiles. The air was heavy with perfume, cigar smoke, and the thrill of risk. To Jay, this was not a vacation game. This was opportunity. His first bets felt like fire. The roulette wheel spun and the ball landed in his favor. Chips stacked on the table, rising like small towers. He grinned, ordering another drink, clinking glasses with strangers who cheered his streak. The slot machines sang their hypnotic jingles, flashing screens promising even greater rewards. In those early hours, Jay felt invincible. The Caribbean was his kingdom and the casino his crown. He thought, this is the trip where I double my money. This is where I finally get ahead. Every win made the dream feel real. But luck is a cruel companion. The same roulette wheel that had once landed on his number began to betray him. The dealer's smile never changed, but the cards stopped falling in his favor. Chips disappeared faster than they stacked. He chased losses with bigger bets, telling himself the tide would turn. Drinks blurred his judgment, the neon glow made time meaningless, and the hours slipped away. The strangers who once clapped him on the back drifted off to their cabins, leaving him hunched over the table, eyes fixed on the spinning wheel. By the time he looked down at his chips, most of them were gone. When the lights of the casino dimmed for closing, Jay stumbled out with only a sick feeling in his stomach. The thrill had curdled into despair. $16,000 gone. The number rang in his ears, repeating like a curse. He leaned against the railing on deck, staring out at the endless dark water. Waves slapped against the hull as if mocking him. He still had nearly $15,000 in cash tucked away, but instead of comfort, it felt like a burden. He thought about debts, about customs waiting in Puerto Rico, about the possibility of losing even more. On the surface, the ship was a floating paradise. For Jay, it had become a prison of his own making. The sea stretched out before him, vast and unforgiving, whispering temptations he was not ready to admit. The gamble had only just begun. The next morning, the rhapsody of the seas glided smoothly towards San Juan. The pool deck was alive with sunscreen, laughter, and piña coladas. But Jay sat alone, slouched in a deck chair, staring into the distance. The salty air stung his lungs. His head was heavy, not from the ocean breeze, but from the weight of what he had lost. $16,000. The number clung to him like seaweed, sticky and impossible to shake. He replayed every losing hand in his mind. He saw the wheel spin in slow motion, the ball clattering into the wrong pocket again and again. He heard the hollow thud of chips sliding across the table to someone else. Passengers laughed around him, but all Jay heard was the ringing echo of his failure. In his cabin, the reality was worse. A letter sat on the desk from Royal Caribbean. It was blunt, stamped with the cruise line seal. Outstanding balance, $16,710.24, settlement required. The words punched him harder than any wave. He owed nearly $17,000, and it was tied almost exclusively to casino and gaming charges. His hands shook as he stuffed the letter into his bag as if hiding it could erase the debt. He still had cash, nearly $15,000, tucked in a waterproof pouch. It should have been his safety net. Instead, it felt like a ticking bomb. He imagined walking through customs in San Juan, forced to declare the money. He pictured agents seizing it, taxing it, leaving him with nothing. In his mind, the walls of the cabin closed in. He could not breathe. By afternoon, the ship was docked. Tourists lined up to disembark for shopping and sightseeing. Jay walked the upper deck instead, pacing back and forth like a man on trial. He clutched the pouch under his shirt, sweat soaking through the fabric. He leaned on the railing, staring at the waves below. The water shimmered with sunlight, a moving mirror of blue and white. To most, it was beauty. To him, it was escape. The thought came quietly at first. What if I just go into the water? No customs, no taxes, no questions. Just me and my cash. A crazy idea. Yet the longer he stood there, the more it grew roots in his mind. Passengers nearby pointed at the skyline of San Juan, taking selfies and laughing. Jay did not hear them. His eyes locked on the sea, hypnotized by its rhythm. The pouch of money pressed against his chest like a stone. His breathing quickened. His heart pounded like a drum. He thought of the debt, the letter, the shame. He thought of explaining to his family. He thought of the casino dealers who smiled while taking his chips. And then the thought turned into a decision. He swung one leg over the railing. His hands gripped the cold steel. For a moment, the world stood still. The city shimmered in the distance. The wind carried faint music from the pool deck. Then, without hesitation, he jumped. The crowd gasped. A scream rang out from behind him. Someone shouted, "Man overboard!" The calm afternoon shattered. Jay plunged into the Caribbean, the cold water hitting him like a wall. His body thrashed, bubbles filling his vision. He surfaced, coughing, clutching the pouch of cash tight against his chest. The ship towered above him, passengers leaning over railings, pointing and shouting. In that instant, Jay felt a rush of freedom mixed with terror. He had escaped the ship, but the ocean was merciless. Waves slapped his face, his arms burned as he tried to stay afloat. The pouch weighed him down like an anchor. Onboard alarms blared, crew members rushed to the edge, radios in hand. The floating palace he had gambled his life away on now looked down at him like a giant judge. The gamble had left the casino. Now it was between him and the sea. The water was colder than Jay expected. It swallowed him whole, pulling at his clothes and tugging on the pouch strapped to his chest. He kicked wildly, his arms cutting through the waves, but every movement felt slower, heavier. The pouch clung to him like a weight, dragging him under. Above, the rhapsody of the seas loomed like a skyscraper, its decks crowded with passengers leaning over the railings. Shouts of "Man overboard!" echoed across the water. Crew members pointed and scrambled, radios buzzing with urgency. But the ship was too massive to stop quickly. Jay was on his own. Salt burned his throat as he coughed and fought to stay afloat. His thoughts spun in panic. He had leapt to escape, but now the ocean threatened to claim him entirely. Just when his arms began to ache with exhaustion, he heard the faint roar of engines. Two jet skiers, tourists out for an afternoon ride near the harbor, spotted him flailing in the water. At first, they thought it was a prank, a daredevil stunt pulled by some thrill-seeking passenger. But the desperation in Jay's eyes told a different story. They circled closer, their machines chopping the water into spray. "Grab on!" one shouted over the roar. Jay lunged at the side of the jet ski, nearly tipping it, clutching with trembling hands. With effort, they hauled him aboard, his soaked clothes dripping, his pouch clutched to his chest like it was his last lifeline. The jet ski sped toward the shore, carrying a man who had just jumped from paradise into disaster. The shoreline of San Juan came into view. People gathered on the docks, pointing and whispering as the jet skiers approached. Jay's face was pale, his hair plastered to his forehead, his chest heaving with exhaustion. Still, his arms wrapped tightly around the pouch. He refused to let go, even when the rescuers urged him to drop it for balance. When the jet ski glided to a stop at the pier, customs and border protection officers were already waiting. They had been alerted by the ship and were ready for him. The crowd pressed closer, phones raised, recording the bizarre sight of a drenched cruise passenger being dragged off a jet ski under armed escort. Agents pulled Jay to his feet. His legs wobbled as they unzipped the pouch strap to his chest. Inside, stacks of bills sat wrapped in rubber bands, dripping from seawater but unmistakably real. One officer began counting out loud, his voice flat and steady. 1,000, 2,000, 3,000. The crowd leaned forward, whispering in disbelief. The counting continued until the final tally was announced. $14,600. Gasps rippled through the bystanders. Some muttered that he must have stolen it. Others guessed it was drug money. Nobody believed the simple truth that it was his, and he was terrified of losing it to customs. Jay's chest tightened as officers snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. His soaked clothes clung to him, his eyes darting between the agents and the crowd. The pouch was sealed in an evidence bag, the bills flashing like a symbol of both his desperation and his downfall. As they led him up the dock, whispers followed. "That's the gambler. He lost 16 grand in the casino. He jumped ship with all that cash." The irony hit him like another wave. He had jumped to escape debt and fear, but instead he had leapt straight into the hands of the law. The gamble had left the casino, but the stakes were higher than ever. At the dock in San Juan, Jay was drenched, cuffed, and shivering. Federal agents escorted him into a small room near the harbor, a plain white space with a single metal table and a buzzing light above. His pouch of money sat sealed in a clear evidence bag on the table. The bills inside looked almost alive, floating in the moisture left from the sea. Special Agent Gabriel Santiago of Homeland Security Investigations walked in, placing a thin stack of papers on the table. He stared at Jay for a long moment before speaking. "You jumped off a cruise ship. You had over $10,000 in cash. You did not report it. That is a federal crime." Jay shifted in his chair, his wet clothes clinging to his skin. He swallowed hard and said in Spanish, his voice barely steady, "I did not want to report the currency because I thought I was going to be taxed. I thought they would take it from me." The agent opened his file. He slid a document across the table. Printed in bold letters at the top was, "Outstanding balance." Beneath it, a total, $16,710.24. The charges were almost exclusively casino and gaming expenses. Blackjack, roulette, poker. It was all there in black and white. Santiago leaned forward. "You owe this to Royal Caribbean. You ran up the bill in the casino, and when the ship docked, you tried to run. Do you know how this looks? A man in debt, with cash strapped to his chest, jumping overboard." Jay shook his head quickly. "It was not like that. I was scared. I thought they would ask questions about the money. I thought they would take everything." But his words sounded hollow. On the page, it looked like a man who lost his fortune in a casino and tried to swim away with the rest. An officer entered, carrying another folder. He placed it on the table and read aloud, "You are charged with failing to report the transport of monetary instruments over $10,000 into the United States." The words rang in Jay's ears. He had expected trouble, maybe a fine or angry letters from the cruise line. But a federal charge was different. It meant prison, records, and headlines. Santiago asked calmly, "Do you understand what that means?" Jay nodded weakly, his eyes fixed on the pouch of cash. The same money he had jumped into the sea to protect was now evidence against him. Meanwhile, reporters swarmed outside. The story spread fast. A man lost $16,000 gambling, then leapt into the ocean with a fortune strapped to his chest. Cameras flashed, locals gathered, and the scene grew into a spectacle. Royal Caribbean released only one sentence to the press. "As this is an ongoing investigation, we are working with authorities and have no further comment." It was clean, professional, and distant. But among passengers still on board, rumors flew. Some swore they had seen him winning big before it all collapsed. Others whispered he had stolen the money. Everyone agreed on one thing: the ship had never seen drama like this. Inside the interrogation room, Jay sat hunched over, his hands cuffed, his voice cracking. He whispered, "I just wanted to keep my money. I did not want to lose more. That is all." But no one in the room believed it was that simple. To the agents, he was a man who gambled, lost, and then risked his life to avoid responsibility. To the cruise line, he was a debtor who owed them thousands. To the law, he was now a criminal facing federal charges. The irony cut deeper than the ocean waves he had jumped into. He thought escaping the ship would free him from debt and fear. Instead, it dragged him into something far worse. By Sunday morning, the story was everywhere. Local newspapers splashed bold titles. Cruise passenger loses $16,000 in casino, then jumps overboard. Television anchors recited the details with incredulous tones, as if they could not believe it themselves. On social media, the memes spread faster than the waves. Images of gamblers sinking with captions like "The house always wins" went viral overnight. In Puerto Rico, crowds gathered outside the courthouse, curious to glimpse the man who had turned a luxury cruise into a federal case. Cameras clicked, microphones stretched forward. Jay's name was now tied not to leisure or travel, but to desperation and crime. People across the country argued about the story. Some pitied him, saying gambling addiction had broken him and that he needed help, not prison. Others mocked him, calling him foolish for trying to swim away from debt with a pouch of cash. Cruise passengers who had been on the ship shared their stories online. One wrote, "I saw him at the tables. He was winning big at first, then it all collapsed. The man looked like he was carrying the world on his shoulders." Another posted, "I never thought I'd see someone leap off a cruise ship for money." Everyone had an opinion. Few saw the human being behind the headlines. Inside the courtroom, Jay stood in front of a federal judge. He was no longer a passenger or a gambler. He was a defendant. The charge was clear: failing to report the transport of monetary instruments over $10,000 into the United States. The pouch of $14,600 sat in a clear plastic bag on the evidence table, a haunting reminder of how fast fortune could turn into disaster. When asked to speak, Jay's voice was low. "I did not want to break the law. I only thought they would take it." I was scared his words barely carried through the room. The judge remained stern. Fear was no defense. The law did not care about fear. Back in his cell, Jay sat on a metal bunk staring at the concrete wall. His hands trembled as he replayed the events over and over. The casino lights, the spinning wheel, the flashing cards, the cheers when he won, the silence when he lost, the salt water crashing around him as he clutched the pouch. He realized how quickly excitement had turned to ruin. He had boarded the cruise dreaming of riches. He had disembarked in chains. Outside, the world kept moving. The cruise sailed on to its next port. The passengers ordered cocktails, laughed at shows, and carried home their vacation stories. But for Jay, the trip would forever be remembered as the gamble that cost him everything. The lesson was bitter and clear. Gambling promises dreams, but more often it delivers nightmares. Jay had chased fortune until he had nothing left but fear. He thought the sea might save him. Instead, it revealed him. The story spread as a cautionary tale. Parents told it to children, friends told it in bars, gamblers whispered it across poker tables. Everyone remembered the man who lost $16,000, jumped into the ocean, and was caught with $14,000 strapped to his chest. In the end, the casino had taken his money, the sea had nearly taken his life, and the law had taken his freedom. The house always wins, and when desperation drowns reason, even the ocean cannot hide the truth. This is the end of that story. Now tell me in the comments, what's your most unbelievable story? I'll read out the funniest ones in the next video. Do not forget to hit a like button and subscribe. See you.